Oh, hey guys. Okay, so I'm back again to just kind of finish off the second half of my presentation. The last video I left talking about the method, so I want to pick up there talking about my data collection and then the results and some of the applications and implications. I'll try to keep it brief. There's a lot in the documents themselves, so I'd encourage you, if you're watching this video and looking through this presentation, click on the links in the slides, and that will take you to a lot of my thoughts already. So I'll repeat a few, or maybe I'll just hit the highlights in this video as I walk through kind of what I learned. Maybe I'll reflect a little bit at the end about what I learned through this process as well in a meta sense. So first of all, I collect two kinds of data. At least I tried. I used the rubric pre-test and post-test from a previous presentation that they had just done that did not have kind of the higher stakes audience, just presenting to the class. And then I used the rubric on the post-test to see if I could measure, using that rubric, any increase in their oral communication skills and their performance. As I reflect on the use of those tools, the rubrics themselves were not perfectly aligned as I kind of look back on them, and it's just a small sample size, 9 or 10 students, so to draw any sort of conclusions quantitatively doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the numbers are there, and you can click on the chart and have a look at them. I broke it down between their score on their communication and their presentation application skills. For both of them, a score out of 40 based on the rubric. And then I looked at the increase in percentages, whether they went up or down. It's a bit all over the map. And there's reasons for each one of those students that you could talk about. So I don't think that information is as helpful as the next information that I collected was kind of reflections in the students' perceptions of the experience. And so I had them write fairly lengthy reflections based on kind of reflecting back on what happened, how they're feeling now, and what they would do in the future as they have a summative project where they're doing a similar style presentation. And so I kind of read through all of them. I found three themes that jumped out at me with some of their information, and then I coded it. So and then I took those kind of quotes that matched the theme, put them in a chart, and did some analysis. So you could link on that document. There's also a link to the document that just has their reflections that have been kind of highlighted according to each theme. So the three themes that came out, it makes sense given my inquiry question, was the impact that audience and risk have on engagement and skill development with students. The second theme I found was how scaffold and practice lead to greater skill development. That's a kind of a no-brainer. I think we all know that, but there's a few more interesting thoughts about that. And then number three, students took pride in their work because it was difficult and a risky task, and they felt a sense of accomplishment. And then what that feeling looks like going forward as they think about their next one. So I kind of coded those. Here's kind of what I learned from each one of those themes. So most students, in terms of the risk, most students expressed that risk pushed them to practice more. So there's a link between practice and audience. The one outlier, which is interesting, was a student who said he did not find value and actually found it too stressful. And it's actually a really important piece of information, because that specific student would probably be termed as one of my lower level oral communicators and would not have a lot of confidence in that. And so when you apply, and this is kind of skipping a slide ahead to the implications applications, but it does kind of get at the zone of proximal development, where something to consider if you're using kind of a larger audience to kind of increase the stakes and push students to practice their presentation or oral communication skills more, is what level they're currently at. So I mentioned the zone of proximal development. If the task is too risky or too difficult, it's almost doesn't have has a negative effect. So you gotta kind of find the right level and the right risk, and I'd refer you back up to the earlier slides where they have those steps about kind of the levels of risk, and you have to know your students and figure out what is going to be the sweet spot where they are going to feel enough good stress that gets them to practice more, puts them into action, kind of stress that results in positive actions, as opposed to stress that produces anxiety and kind of decreased motivation. That's something to be really careful of as you kind of plan these activities, or at least I should be careful of in the future. The interesting thing is when I look at that student's quantitative data, his score was a lot better on this one than the previous one. So it's almost as if he perceived this task as something that was not great, but it actually did help him improve. He just didn't see the improvement in himself. So that's good information as a teacher. Now I can come alongside him and say, hey, look, you actually did improve and we're getting better, and try to encourage him that way moving forward. Okay, I kind of talked about theme number 2, scaffold and practice. Of course, we know this is just kind of basic common knowledge for a skill. The piece that I took away though was we know this in our heads, but until we experience success through kind of the process of practice and feedback, we don't actually aren't motivated by it. So these students, I hope, will be motivated further to practice kind of in the future. Say, hey, last time I practiced this much, I felt way more confident doing this. And so that brings me to the last theme, was kind of students taking pride in their work of a job well done. They accomplished a difficult and risky task, and they felt, like relief, and they felt also pride. But then when I look at some of the statements about kind of future presentations, they actually anticipated positively the next presentation because of this. They said, yeah, things like, I look forward to it and I'll take pride in being able to do this. And so there definitely was like this carryover of not only did they take pride in a job that was well done, but that feeling of agency hopefully links into future assignments and future tasks of a similar nature. And so that also links back to scaffolding, right? So step by step, we're bringing students' confidence up kind of in these sweet spots where they can be pushed just enough and then experience success. And that also ties into some of the coursework, that one article we had about differentiation, where there was a set of values about what differentiation means. And I remember the one bullet point talking about how students need to be pushed just far enough to kind of grow. So that all links together nicely. Okay, and then just kind of final conclusions. I kind of skipped ahead to some of my application implications, but I did want to kind of at least end here maybe with a few more thoughts on that, as well as an answer to my inquiry question was, what is the impact of project-based learning with an authentic first language audience on the development of ELL's oral communication development? And the data I kind of came to was the quantitative data, while too small of a sample to draw any correlations, suggests that most or some of the students performed similar or better in their scores. And then the real important stuff is the qualitative data reveals an increase in the recognition of the importance of practice, as well as an increase in engagement in students themselves. So they view themselves as people who can practice and grow, and they kind of enjoyed the task. Some of them said, I'm looking forward to the next one. So there's a whole bunch of research out there that links student engagement to student performance and learning. So overall, I would say, if I just had to sum it up, I would say, yes, it will push them to develop their language skills because they will do additional practice if the teacher sets up the structure for scaffolding, and if the task is not beyond kind of their zone of proximal development. So that's kind of where I landed on that, and that's what I learned in this project. I think there's a ton of stuff that I will take with me. I really appreciated just the process of doing this, of taking something that I do, but framing it within kind of really looking hard for evidence to see if what I am structuring as a teacher is having a positive impact on my students, or if it's having a negative impact, to make sure that I stop doing that and I continue to do the things that are good for them, and maybe give me ideas to start doing new things in the future.